Alrighty. Um, Everybody, thank you for joining us today. Um, it is indeed a pleasure to have one of our colleagues from India give us a lecture today on ENT training in her country. I think we all need to remember that India is the most populated country in the world. It exceeds China. I believe the population, and maybe Neely could correct me if I'm wrong, is is over 1.4 billion people. Um, so I'm looking forward to um, hearing this lecture. I can only say one thing. I know that India has a fairly advanced level of otology. There's a lot of textbooks that are written. There's a lot of practicing otologists in India, and they do a lot. There's one book that I read where they do like a lot of the surgery um, transcanal that we wouldn't even do. So, and I'll mention that later in a message on the platform, and I'll show you the textbook cover. In the meantime,
Oh,
I'm going to introduce Nelia Isaac, our lecturer today. She's assistant resident. She'll tell you where she's from because I can't pronounce it. Something Pondicherry Institute of
yeah.
Medical Sciences. So um, I appreciate your time with us, Neil, and I'm excited to hear your lecture.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Wagner. So, yeah, so today I'll be talking about the training of ENT in my country, which is India. And at the outset, I want to
Who we lost? We must have a communication issue with connectivity. So uh, let's give her a second. I wonder if she knows. Nelia, Nella, Nelia. Okay, we lost her. She's gonna have to reconnect with us in just a second. It's 11:30 at night in India on Tuesday.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. We lost your
Okay.
connection for a minute.
Okay, okay, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so if you can share your screen and continue, we appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Are you able to see the screen?
Okay, just a second. Double click to enter full screen mode. Okay. Okay, we're good. Okay. Why don't you start from the beginning again? Okay.
Yeah, I'll start. Yeah, so good morning and good evening to everyone. So as many of you know that here it is 11:30 in the night. But there it is 10 a.m. So good morning to everyone. And at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Wagner for giving me this opportunity because this is the first time I'm talking on a global platform. Um, and talking about my country and the ENT training here. Okay, so do let me know if the connection gets bad. I don't know why the internet is like this today. Yeah, so this is an overview of how the presentation will be. It is on the similar lines that the talk on, my colleague from Ukraine and Lithuania had spoken about. I will be talking about my country, then my hospital, and the ENT training, postgraduate training here, and the equipment, and also the challenges that we face here because of our population. So, this is where India is located, what is marked in yellow. Is the connection bad, Dr. Wagner? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. Good.
Okay. Yeah. So this is where the India is located. It is part of Asia. And as Dr. Wagner mentioned, we are the second most populous country. I mean, he said it's the most populous. And yes, there are 136 crore, the population. The capital of India. So I put in a diagram of India, the map of India. The capital is New Delhi. And why I've put this picture is because of the number of languages. There are around 447 native languages just in India, which is why when as a doctor, when you are seeing a lot of patients, there are many people who you need to know a lot of languages in order to communicate with different people. So that is what is unique to India, the number of languages, the different cultures, and that's what makes India India. And we share land borders with Pakistan on the west. Towards the north, we have China and Bhutan, and towards the west, we have Bangladesh and Myanmar. So it is also the most populous democracy in the world. So this is where I am from. I am from the southern part of India. So as you can see in the picture that I have put, so this is where I come from. I am in Pondicherry right now. That is where I'm working for the past 1.5 months. Previously, for the last soon after my post graduation, I was working in the city of Chennai, which is very close to Pondicherry. Okay, so all this comes in the state of Tamil Nadu, even though Pondicherry is a union territory, which I will be talking about later. Yeah, so this is the south of India. And just a fun fact is that my parents are based here in the city of Bangalore. So that is where I did my schooling from. And then I moved here to Pondicherry. The college that I am working in right now is where I did my undergraduate training as well. And so now I've come back as a faculty, as a teaching faculty. So, yeah, that's how it is. So I've just put a few pictures to show you about Pondicherry. So Pondicherry is basically a union territory, and it is also a tourist destination. So there are people from all over the world who visit Pondicherry because it is surrounded by the Bay of Bengal on one side. It has beaches, and it has the French influence because it was formerly French India. So it has a blend of the Tamil, okay, because it's in Tamil Nadu, the state of Tamil Nadu, plus the French culture. There's a beautiful blend of both. So when you are walking on the streets, you see even French and you see the localites. Okay, so that's how it is. And there is a area which is known as the White Town, where you have a French influence and looks very different from the rest of the town. So these are a few sites, sightseeing places in Pondicherry. So right on top is the Gandhi statue, which is on the beach. So as you may or may not know that this is a statue of Mahatma Gandhi, who was the father of our nation. Okay, below that, this is the Promenade Beach, which is on one side of Pondicherry. Then you have this golden globe that lies here. So this golden globe is also known as the Mantri Mandir. So it is actually a shrine to a deity that is worshipped here, known as the Mother. Okay, so this is like a temple that was constructed for her worshippers to go and worship her. Below that, we have the Aurobindo ashram that is here. So as you can see, this part has a French influence and looks very different from the rest of the town. And the buildings are gray and all monochromatic colors. So that is the Aurobindo ashram. Aurobindo is another person that many of the localites worship. Okay, the next, you have the church here, which is the Immaculate Conception Cathedral. Okay, it's a very big church right in the center of Pondicherry. Above that is arch. It's known as the IE Mandapam. So that is like the entrance to the town of Pondicherry. Above that, you have a basilica, the Basilica of Sacred Heart of Jesus. And right on top is the temple. It's a Hindu temple which is known as the Manukula Vinayakar temple. So that is also quite a famous destination. And usually there is an elephant that sits outside and blesses all the devotees that come there. Okay, so this is how the beachfront looks. There is no sand. There used to be a sandy beach before, but now they have the government has put protected this this area by erecting a sea wall, by placing granite boulders there in order to prevent erosion. Okay, so because of that, there is a lot of seabed erosion. There is a lot of turbulence, and what we localize or we call it is the rocky beach. That is a seawall that protects Pondicherry from the coast. So the temperature here is tropical. It is quite hot and dry, and this is a panoramic view of the town. I know it looks very populated, and there is hardly you can't see any area that is free of buildings. Yeah, so one more interesting part of Pondicherry is Auroville. So Auroville, as you can see the Golden Globe on top, and you can see many people sitting around it. So Auroville is a place, or it's known as the City of Dawn, which is an experimental township. So here you have people from all over the world. So the idea behind this was to set up a township where you have people of all nationalities, of all castes, creed, religion, everyone staying in unity, in harmony. Here, there is no religion. They have a currency of their own, and they are able to sustain themselves. They grow their own vegetables. They do carpentry. They do lots of other activities, and they all live in harmony with each other. So I hope that all of you, you all get a chance to visit Pondicherry and see all these interesting sites and places at least once in your lifetime. So coming to the lecture, that coming to the healthcare system, in Pondicherry, there are about 16 hospitals. Okay, so even though Pondicherry is a very small place, we have 16 hospitals that includes the government hospitals and as well as the private hospitals and medical colleges. So there are 16 in Tamil Nadu. As I was telling, I was working in a place called Chennai, a city of Chennai, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu. Okay, so that is just 3 hours from here. uh, because I've been working there for so many years, my lecture may include some pictures of the place that I worked in, because the place that I'm working in right now is I've just joined it, so I've not included too many pictures of that yet. So in Tamil Nadu, we have about 1,200 government hospitals, just government hospitals, and the same number of private hospitals. So there are a lot of hospitals and there are a lot of doctors as well. 6 states in our country have more doctors than what the WHO has recommended, which is 1:1,000, one doctor for 1,000 patient guideline. Okay, so 6 states, which include Tamil Nadu, where we are in. So in Tamil Nadu, we have a doctor to patient ratio of 1:253, and the density of doctors is 4, which is the same as in Norway and Sweden. Yeah. So in Chennai, we have at least 10 exclusive ENT hospitals. Okay, and two of them are very famous. One is the MERF, or the Madras ENT Research Foundation, that was founded by Dr. Mohan Kameshwaran. So I've attached a picture of him. So he is world famous, and he does travel to other countries giving lectures. I put in this article because it said that he was the first Indian to rise up to the regional head or regional secretary of the IFOS, that is the International Federation of Otological Societies. So there in MERF or MERF, and there is another ENT hospital known as KKR ENT hospital, run by a person, by a doctor KK Ramalingam. So both these hospitals, they do conduct temporal bone workshops at least twice a year, and they open it out to residents. So I have attended when I was in my first year of ENT residency. I've attended the temporal bone workshop in the KKR ENT hospital. Apart from this, there are many hospitals in India that conduct these temporal bone dissections workshops routinely. Yeah. So yeah, so the number of, so as I told, the number of ENT doctors are quite a lot. But when I was going through the statistics, it said it was about 1:2 for 28,000 patients. But in South India, there are definitely a lot more, a lot more doctors and a lot more ENT doctors. In fact, Chennai is known as the medical capital of India because it is known for its good healthcare facilities and good doctors. So there are people from north of India and from the east and west who come to Chennai for their medical treatment. So that is why it is known as the medical capital or the healthcare capital of India. Now, the number of female ENT surgeons have also grown. So before, when I talked to my professors, there were very few lady ENT surgeons. It was a very male dominated field. But now in 2009 statistics, it was 1,000 plus, and now it has increased even more. That most of the, postgraduates are women, which is a good thing. Apart from that, there are about 16 audiology schools, and the most prominent being the All India Institute of Speech and Hearing, which is again located in the south of India. I have just put in the average cost of ear surgeries just to give you an idea of how it is here, because when you compare it with the US, it will definitely seem lesser. So for a type 1 tympanoplasty, it's about 250 to 300 US dollars. For grommet insertion, it's these are approximate figures, 125 to 150 US dollars. For a MRM, it's around 400 to 600 US dollars, and for a stepidotomy, it is 450 to 600 US dollars. So that is how things work. For consultation, it may vary. Like if it is a government hospital, then they charge, it could be free. If it is a private medical college, like how what I am working in right now, it is about when converting to dollars, it's about zero point 0.6 dollars, 0.6, which may seem very less, but here it is the normal. And in a private hospital, it can go up to about 500 rupees. So when you convert it, it's around $50, I think. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that in India, we have this national program for the prevention and control of deafness. So this was initiated in January 2007, which is related to our field. So it was estimated that the prevalence of deafness was about 6.3% in India, and this program was initiated with the purpose to identification, diagnosis, and treatment of ear problems which are responsible for causing hearing loss and deafness. So the government has initiated these screening camps and training camps in order to train personnel at the district level itself to identify children and people with hearing disabilities in order to catch them early. Okay, so they have initiated the distribution of free hearing aids on these identified children up to 15 years of age, with free servicing for a period of 1 year. Okay, so these camps are conducted. Once the patients are identified, they are sent to the district hospital. If they require very high level of treatment, then they are sent to the medical colleges. Okay, so that is how it goes. Another point that is connected with this national program is the OAE, okay, autoacoustic emission screening of all newborns, okay, which was not done before. So now it is stated that all newborns, uh, soon after delivery, before the mother gets discharged, that we do a OAE screening of the newborn. So from the data that I got, in US they follow a formula of 1 1, 3, and 6, which means that before 1 month you confirm the diagnosis of hearing loss, before 3 months you fit the hearing aid, and before 6 months you enroll the child for early identification. So a similar formula is followed here. So we get lot of newborns who come to our OPD in order to do the OAE screening, okay, before the mother gets discharged, or if they are not able to do it, then they come back within the first 1 to 2 months and do this. So coming to the medical education, so this is, I've covered about the state and where I'm from. Coming to how medical education is here, um, I was going through the two lectures from Ukraine and Lithuania. So I think based on that, here it is at a much earlier age that we become doctors and we do our postgraduate training, because here we do our schooling from class 1 to 12. So class 12 you're around 16 to 17 years of age. Soon after that you do a entrance exam. So there are people who want to do engineering or medicine, they choose what they want to do, or they want to go into the arts, so they do a entrance exam for for medicine. We have something known as the NEET entrance exam. So NEET stands for National Eligibility Entrance Test. Okay, so that is a all India test that we do to qualify and enter a MBBS course or the undergraduate training. So MBBS stands for Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery. So this is a 4.5 year course that we do here, and it is conducted by the MCI board, the Medical Council of India. Now, since last year, the MCI has changed to NMC, or National Medical Council Board. So they are the ones who conduct this exam, and those who want to become doctors do this and enter their MBBS course. So I don't know how it is in other countries, but here in the first year, we do anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry. That will be a 1 year. In the second year, we do pathology, pharmacology, microbiology, and forensic medicine. That is 1.5 years. In your third year, you do ENT, ophthalmology, community medicine, and you start your clinical rotation. That is, you go into the clinical side, you do your case presentation side by side. This is again 1 year. The fourth year, you do your general medicine, general surgery, obs and gynae, and pediatrics for 1 year. So with this, you finish 4.5 years. After that, you do a rotatory clinical internship for 1 year. So once you do this 5.5 years, then you are awarded the MBBS degree. So from then you can be called as a doctor, and you can attach DR to your name. So once the undergraduate training is over, so that is what I was saying, I did my undergraduate training in the same college that I'm working in right now in Pondicherry. So once you're done with your undergraduate training and you are qualified as a doctor, usually students take about 1 or 2 years to prepare for your postgraduate entrance exam. So you directly decide what you want to do, and you have a common entrance exam, all India entrance exam, known as the national NEET PG exam, or National Eligibility Come Entrance Test. So this is new, because when I did my post graduation, that was a different concept. There was a Each state had their state medical entrance exam to go for your post graduation, and there were certain universities that conducted their own exam. So now the government has made it better for the students by having just one single exam and by doing this, based on your rank, you go in for counseling and you're granted the course based on how well you do it. So as opposed to US, like since I visited US in 2009 for the temporal bone course, um over there ENT was a specialty that was in high demand. As opposed to that, here in India, ENT is something that is a specialty that people take as a something that you take if you don't get anything else. It's something like that way. I mean, for me, it was my first choice, but then generally the departments or the specialties people prefer is orthopedics or radiology or women, many of them prefer obstetrics and gynecology. So ENT, ophthalmology, is something that people who don't get those, they prefer that. So I found that very different when I visited US, where it's good that people are vying for the ENT seat. So here the fees, the course fees per annum is, I put it both in the local currency and in US dollars. It's about $4,000 to $55,000. It can go up to, depending on the place that you get. So if it is a private medical college, it can even go up to $55,000. If it is a government college, the fees will be lesser. It will be about $2,000. I will talk about the PG course in the next slide. The number of PG seats or postgraduate seats for ENT in India is around 484 seats. So you have a lot of ENT doctors that come out. And sometimes there is a saturation of jobs, so it's a little difficult to get a job if you are a ENT doctor at times in India, especially in the south of India. And most of the hospitals or the medical colleges, they have 6 postgraduate seats, so 2 per year. So you have 2 in the 1st year, 2 in the 2nd year, 2 in the 3rd year. And another thing that I wanted to mention is that in India, the postgraduate course is 3 years. Okay, unlike in US where it is 5 years, and in certain countries it's 6 years, here it is only 3 years. And after 3 years you are considered a ENT specialist. So I was mentioning about the postgraduate course. So once you do your entrance exam, you have 3 options. So you can either do your MS-ENT, which is Master of Surgery in ENT, or you can do your DNB in ENT. So what I have done is my DNB. It stands for Diplomate of the National Board. So both your MS and your DNB are considered at par because both are 3 years course. The only difference is that MS-ENT is granted by a medical college, whereas a DNB ENT can be done even in a hospital setup. So it need not be a medical college. So that is the only difference, but they are both considered at par once you finish. And you also have a diploma in ENT, which is a DLO, which is 2 years. So generally, people who do a diploma, they further do a MS or DNB in order to complete their course. So as I was mentioning, it's a 3-year training, clinical and surgical training. But I feel that sometimes 3 years is a little too short, because I have gone through the process and I feel, since it is a surgical field, that 3 years is a too short to, by the time you get accustomed to the subject and you get a hang of it, and you're exposed to so many surgeries, so the learning curve is quite steep. So in fact, I was very happy that in certain countries it's 5 and 6 years, because I feel that by 6 years you are actually qualified and you can practice independently. But here, as of now, it is 3 years, and it has been 3 years for for the past so many years. So I've included a picture of myself. This is me getting my awarded my postgraduate degree or my DNB in ENT. This happened few years back at the convocation. These are a few the academic activities when you're doing your post graduation. So generally, depending on the college or the medical college, if it is more academic oriented, you may have clinical case presentations even more than a week. You can have it even thrice a week. Most of the medical colleges have specialty clinics. So they have, generally it is held in the afternoons. You have a vertigo clinic, allergy clinic, pediatric ENT clinic, rhinology clinic. So many of them have those specialty clinics. Monthly symposiums, theory classes can be taken, generally it's taken once a week or once in 2 weeks. We all will have to maintain a logbook with the cases that we're seeing, and the topics, the theory classes that we have attended, the CMEs or or any lectures that we have attended, guest lectures, everything will have to be logged into your book. Apart from that, you have your dissertation. Thesis is mandatory for all postgraduates. So a guide, you have a guide and a co-guide who guide you through this process, and this is mandatory for you to attend or for you to get your ticket to give your final exam. So coming to where I am right now, so this is the college that I am working in right now, which is Pondicherry Institute of Medical Sciences. It's also known as PIMS. So as I said before, this is where I did my undergraduate training as well, and now I have come back as a teaching faculty. This is the cash emergency building as well as the admin building. So this is where we go for any of the emergency cases. Coming to our department, so PIMS, it was started only in October 2001. It's a 640 bedded hospital, and the daily census here is about 500 patients per day. In the ENT OPD, it varies from 40 to 60. So now, because of the COVID pandemic, the number of patients have decreased a bit. So sometimes we may get only 30 patients a day, but generally it is 50 to 60. The census for the last 1 month was around 940 patients in our ENT OPD. So we have our OPD, our outpatient department runs from Monday to Saturday, 6 days a week. We work from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And we have two units. So I am in unit one. Each unit has five doctors. So they call us. You have different levels. You have the professor. You have associate professor, assistant professor, and senior resident. So I am a senior resident. And you have three PGs or postgraduates who are working with us. Hello.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and we have two OT days. So we have like one unit operates on Tuesday and the other unit operates on Thursday. And there are two audiologists in our department. About the duties, the on-call duty, we have it. It is only a on-call duty. We don't have to stay in the hospital, but many of us stay very close to the hospital. So when there is a emergency case, we need to go and see it. So, as a senior resident, which is what I am, we get about 15 duties a month. So, because it is only a on-call duty and we don't stay as such on the on the campus, we don't get a post duty off. So there's a balance. Sometimes it gets busy and there are a lot of cases. Sometimes you may not get any calls. So it can go both ways. So this picture I have put at the next few slides that I'm putting is are pictures of the OPD and setup. But this is of the hospital that I was working in. Okay, so this is how the OPD is. At the side, you have the patient console and you have the patient chair and where the this is where the doctor sits. You even have a monitor so you can connect the endoscope and do your endoscopies. This is a closer picture of that. This is the procedure room. So yeah, this is the where we make the patient sit and we do the microscopy, endoscopy, other small dressings for post-op patients, and tracheostomy tube changes also sometimes we do for long-term tracheostomy patients. um, Foreign body removals, these are all the procedures that we do here. Okay, so you can see the microscope. Okay, so this is the examination microscope. You have the endoscope trolley here with endoscopes at the side. So as I said, these are the outpatient procedures that we do. The autoendoscopy, examination of the ear under microscopy, suction clearance, and foreign body removals, diagnostic nasal endoscopy, video laryngoscopy, all that we do here. Okay, so coming to the place that I am in right now, we do all sorts of surgeries. Like I am still training. Okay, so but there are many consultants who are completely trained, and they do all the surgeries, all the routine adenoids, tonsils, septoplasty, tympanoplasty, even more advanced surgeries like CSF rhinorrhea repair, microscopic facial nerve decompression, osteoclasty, all that is done. The cancer surgeries like laryngectomy, maxillectomy is also done. Emergency services are there 24/7, and we do it by rotation, the emergency calls. We get a lot of because the this college that I'm working in is located on the highway, which is known as the East Coast Road or ECR Road. It's right on the coast. So because of that, we do get a lot of RTAs, and so they end up in emerge casualty with fractured nasal bones or nasal bleeds and ear bleeds. So compared to the previous places that I was in, here we get a lot more of RTA cases. And we do suturing, laceration of the lacerations, tracheostomies, complex ENT emergencies like pediatric bronchoscopy, laryngoscopy is also done. Okay, so audiology setup. Here again, I've included the place that I was in. So this is where we do the PTA, and we have a two-room setup with a soundproof room and the impedance audiometry room. We do other advanced audiology procedures like BERA, OE, ECOG, WEM. So this is the electrophysiological room where we can do WEM, we can do BERA here, and we have a speech therapy room for pediatric cases, for autistic children and those with the speech delays. We have a room like this. Okay, so this is so that is about the postgraduate training and the place I was. Apart from that, here we have a lot of fellowships also. So there are many hospitals here in India that conduct training fellowships. So one, I've just mentioned a few that are little famous. So one is the MCV ENT hospital. So they have this surgical training program for 20 days. There are many people from all over the world who come and do it, not only in India. And it costs about $1,300. It used to cost $1,300. I don't know, now it must have increased. So they have, so once you opt for what fellowship you want, those 20 days are dedicated to you training in that particular surgery. So you have micro ear surgery, fess and nasal surgery. If it is phono surgery, it's about 40 days, and salivary endoscopy. So I there are a few of my colleagues who I know who have gone for this and have trained and have said that it was very good, because you're given a lot of time to operate since you are new and just developing your surgical skills. The 20 days that you go is thorough training. Okay, so this is a map of India showing the number of fellowships that are available. So as you can see, in the south of India, you have a lot more fellowships than in the north. So in Tamil Nadu, where I am in, it's about 12. Lower down in, in the state of Kerala. So that is where I am from. That is my, where my grandparents were from. So in Kerala, we have a lot of fellowships, 23, and Karnataka about 16. So we do have a lot of fellowships here in India, and many people go in for it. So another, since I was a little more interested in laryngology, so there are some laryngology fellowships in mainly concentrated in three places in India: Mumbai, Pune, and Trivandrum. So in Pune, you have the ENT UK gives a laryngology fellowship that is of 12 months duration, conducted by Dr. Sachin Gandhi. There is another world famous doctor by name Dr. Nupur Nerurkar, who has a phonosurgery fellowship program that lasts for about 6 months, and she takes 2 fellows a year. I've included what they concentrate on. There is another prestigious college in India, which many of you may or may not know, known as the Christian Medical College or CMC Vellore, where they have a 2-year fellowship program in these topics. So you have a audiovestibular diseases fellowship, head and neck and skull base surgery, a fellowship in implantation otology, one in pediatric otolaryngology, rhinology, and laryngology and phonosurgery. So the fellowship here, in order to enter, you have to do an entrance exam to enter this fellowship. So it's a little tough, and there's always a lot of competition, and there are thousands of students who go in for the exam, and it's just like two candidates per fellowship or two fellows per year in each of these fields. So as I already mentioned previously, so in the government or the public sector hospitals, the consultation is free. In there, even the surgery is done free. If it is a private setup, it can be from $0.6 to 6.8 US dollars. It can go up to that. And coming to insurance, so here most patients, they just go in and they pay with cash. Okay, medical insurance is optional, not everyone has it. And if it is a rural setup, there is a variation. The population here, sometimes you have the very poor patients which can't afford this, so they go into the government hospitals. So that is why postgraduates in government hospitals, they get a lot more surgical training because they're dealing with thousands and thousands of patients. So from whatever I've seen in India, like we do get a lot of cases, our working hours are much longer, and we do have a lot of night duties and things like that. But as I already mentioned, the 3 years that we do a PG training, sometimes I feel it is a little short. If it was 5 or 6 years, I feel that you're more independent when you come out of your PG training. Here there are a lot of doctors, but still in the rural areas, most of the doctors are concentrated in urban areas. So in the rural areas, there are still less doctors, because obviously the facilities and doctors don't want to go and stay there, and in a rural setup. So that is still a issue here in India. Another thing is a male dominated field. So ENT, even though there are a lot of women now, still there is a tad bit of the male dominance here. So there's always a feeling that the men operate better and things like that. So that is always there. And yeah, there one thing I didn't mention is that, especially in Chennai where I was, there are a lot of clinics. So most of the doctors or consultants, they work in their hospital or medical college during the day, and in the evening they have their clinics. So there are a lot of clinics, and most of the consultants have a clinic which they go to in the evening. And even a doctor that I know used to work up to nearly 11:30, 12 at night, from morning, like morning goes to his hospital, evening goes to two clinics, in fact. So I think, yeah, like India, we are known to be workaholic. So everyone is like, really driven to work more. Another thing is there is a lot of competition because there are a lot of doctors, lot of ENT doctors, there are a lot of competition, and there are so many hospitals. So especially in the private setup, there's always, each hospital is trying to advertise and bring patients to them. So because of that, there's a lot of competition. One more point is there's a word called doctor shopping. So many patients, as I said, in Chennai, it is the medical or healthcare capital of India. So there are many patients who come and they take multiple, opinions from different doctors. So they go to doctor number one, he says surgery, then they go to another doctor, they say no surgery, so they finally end up treatment with doctor number two. So that is how it is. So most patients, they go to multiple centers, they come to Chennai, then they come to Pondicherry. So this happens a lot here. And so that is a issue. And yeah, so yeah, thank you. And you can ask me any questions which I may have forgotten or missed out mentioning in the presentation.
Neela, listen, very good lecture. I mean, a comprehensive overview of your country, of your medical system, um, and a very advanced infrastructure. Just a couple questions. The total number of ENT in India, it must
Yeah.
exceeds 50,000. How many are there? Do you know?
Total number, I had a slide on that. Yeah, I don't think it's 50,000,
What was
but
one?
uh,
It was
it,
one per 28,000 is
yeah, 1 per 28,000 was the old statistics. So now it is much more. Um, it could be, yeah, it could be around 30,000, I think.
Mhm, mhm.
I'll just probably find that out and, put it in the group. But
Okay,
it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah, no doubt
okay.
it's a
And then
lot.
the other thing is in your ENT training, do you have to pay for that?
Yeah, we do have to pay fees. Like that's what I had put up, the fees per
Right.
annum. So per year you pay, as I said, $4,000 or so. When I was doing it, like for DNB, it is a little lesser, the fees. In rupees, it is 40,000 rupees. So if you convert it, I'm not sure how much it is in dollars. So per year, you pay that amount for 3 years.
Okay, very good.
So that's how it is. Yeah.
Right. That's a little different from other models that we've looked at where, you know, the training like in Lithuania is,
Okay.
they get paid during training, they get a stipend. Okay. In the
Yeah.
United
Here also we do get a stipend, but it's much lesser. Like we don't get so much.
uh
Yeah.
And then the other thing, it looks like head and neck is definitely a part of your training programs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So it depends on center to center. So certain centers, like for example, the hospital that I was in previously, which was a private hospital, there we used to do a lot of head and neck. Like we used to do thyroids, parotids, submandibular gland excisions. During my post graduation, also I did it in a hospital setup. So there was always this tug of war of, like, if there's a thyroid case, like if it goes to surgery, they do it. If it comes to ENT, we do it. So things like that way.
Right.
um yeah, so the current hospital I'm in also, they do some amount of head and neck. So now I think it's becoming a part and parcel of ENT also, even skull base surgery. So it's based on your training. If you're trained in that, you just go ahead and do it, like whether you're ENT or not. It's
Right,
something
because
like that.
some of the models we've discussed, like in Peru and El Salvador, all
Okay.
head and neck is not done by ENT at all. It's done by general
Okay.
surgeons or specialists that are called head and neck surgeons. So it's quite
Okay.
different there. Okay.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Okay. And anybody have any questions? I think there's a lot to glean from this lecture. It was, like I say, it's very comprehensive. Oscar, you always have questions. Do you have any questions today?
Oh, hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. Uh,
Thank you.
I was just wondering because you mentioned that there's an option of doing a 2 years residency or doing a 3 year residency.
Correct.
And is there any benefits between going into 2 year or 3 year program, or you can do the 2 year and then do another 3 years, or how it actually works?
Yeah, so that all depends. As I said, there's an entrance exam. So in your entrance exam, it depends on your rank. So based on your rank, you're allotted your postgraduate seat. So if you get a higher rank, you get your the 3 year course, post graduation course. You get entry into that. If your rank is a little lower, then and you have no other option, then you go in for the diploma course, which is 2 years. So that's how that works. So generally nowadays, diploma, like generally when patients see diploma, they're not very happy. They want the doctor to have a MS or a DNB. I'm talking about Indian patients. So generally those who do a diploma, they further go in for the 3 year course. And so they have 2 degrees to their name. But at the same time, those who have done a diploma need not do 3 years. of that. So they are considered that, they have reached to a certain level. So they just have to do like their MS course will be only 2 years for them. So it is like that. So
Okay.
ideally they do only 4 years at the end of it.
Okay, and
So
just one more question, because you also mentioned that ENT is not a very popular specialty in your
yeah.
country. I was just wondering, is there any, what's the cause for this attitude towards other specialties?
Yeah, so one is about the long term benefit, because I mean, previously there was why radiology became one of the favorites is because people, thought that if you do radiology, then you, after you finish your post graduation and in the long term, you set up a CT scan or a, radiology center or scan center. So you are making more income at the end of the day, and it is a little less high intensity and regular work timings and things like that. So that's how radiology became one of the favorites at one point of time. Secondly, lots of men prefer orthopedics because I don't know why they prefer it, but they prefer orthopedics. uh, and plus I guess it's more, they find it more challenging. And another thing is, as I said, the same for radiology, the long term investment. Like, they feel like you can earn much more. Like when you compare a ENT surgery, the cost of the surgery is much lesser. When you compare a orthopedic surgery, you're earning much more. So when you think of your earnings in the long run, with orthopedics you're definitely earning much more than as a ENT surgeon. So that is one of the things. Secondly, about obstetrics and gynecology, again it's about the long term income. Like, as an obstetrician, it's like, every day you're performing so many deliveries and things like that, and the number of patients also are much more. So based on all that, those specialties have taken up precedence over ENT, because ENT is tough. Like now, especially the number of patients are lesser, the number of ear diseases, as Dr. Wagner was saying. Like before, there were a lot of CSOM and lot of complications that used to come. Now, the number of, the prevalence of ear cases or infected ear cases are much lesser because of the better hygiene and immunity of patients. So, so the patient load on ENT doctors uh, varies. Like, sometimes you may have more, sometimes you may have less, but whereas in obstetrics and in orthopedics, you'll always have a lot of patients. So people
Mhm.
think in terms of that, and go
Okay.
ahead for that.
Thank you. Just and the last question. It appears I
Yeah.
have a lot of questions. So you mentioned that it's the model that doctors, they during the day they usually work at the government hospitals, and then they
Yes.
move to their own private practice. It's quite similar to what we have here in Ukraine. And I was
Okay.
wondering, those private centers, they are mainly like office, so they just consult the patient, or it's like the facility where they also perform surgeries on the private basis.
It can be both, because there are some doctors, like, who have their clinic which is only a OPD setup, and they bring their patients. Like if they require surgery, they bring those patients to the hospital that they're working in. There are some other surgeons who have tie-ups with many other hospitals. So they, so they, certain hospitals have a OT setup of their own, so they can go there itself and operate. So as I was telling, like a few surgeons that I know, so they work during the day in the private hospital or the hospital that they're mainly connected with. Then they can go to 2 3 other places. So they can go to another hospital and, give their special consultation. Then they can go to their private clinic. So if you want to work, you can like, work the whole day virtually. And some of those hospitals have their own OT setup, so they can just operate the patient in that, smaller hospital with the OT setup. Especially if they have
And
a anesthesiologist that they know, they usually go as a team. So they call the anesthesiologist, who's working with them, and they do the surgery there.
And the equipment is usually better, or the level of care is better at the private hospital, or it's about the same? Because it looks like the doctors are the same because they work half of the day in the
Yeah.
private and half of the day in the government. So you
Mm.
basically can receive the same level of care, or it different in private and
I would say it is different because in private hospitals, the patient is paying a little more. So the attitude and the treatment and, the management, hospital staff, they treat them with a little more respect and things like that. Whereas in the government hospital, it's generally the poorer patients that go. So the treatment will be the same. I mean, the final treatment or the medications that you give will be good, but the attitude will be a more relaxed attitude. Whereas in the private setup, you treat the patient like God. Like in a hospital that I worked, the theme was like the patient is God. So you have to treat the patient like that way. So it differs, I would say, yeah.
Well,
okay.
great.
Thank you.
Just for a little comment here, Thomas, our colleague from Lithuania, happened to have a problem with his microphone, but he stated in a
Okay.
little message to us that he was at the KKR hospital in Chennai
Okay.
a year ago, and
Okay.
that he had a great experience there. And, he saw things that you only read about in textbooks. So, Thomas,
Okay.
we really appreciate your comment there. Really do.
Yeah.
Any other
Yeah. Yeah.
questions? We're hitting about an hour here into this, and if there's any other questions, please, please, feel free to ask them.
Richard,
Yeah, go ahead.
thanks for inviting me along on this. The cost for their procedures are several orders of magnitude less than what we experienced. Is medical tourism picking up in India?
Yes, I would say yes, it is. Because there are many people who come from all over the world here. One, because of the cost. And another thing is, which I forgot to mention, I wanted to mention, is that the ease with which you see the doctor, it's much quicker. I don't know how it is. Like from what I've heard, it's like abroad that you need to go to your GP and then the GP refers you to the ENT, if I'm correct. Whereas here it is, if I have a ear pain, I can just directly go to the ENT doctor. I need not see anyone else. Like I make an appointment with the ENT doctor and I see him tomorrow morning itself. So it is a much quicker process because you don't have to see anyone else. But you have that problem, you go directly to that doctor. You need not see anyone else or be referred to that person, and you can get your appointment quite fast. Like, as I said, if you have it today, even tomorrow, if you want, you can get an appointment with the doctor. So I think in certain countries it takes a little more time, that you'll have to make an appointment at least way ahead, and things like that. So correct me if I'm wrong in that.
Well, thank you, Neela. Michael, if you have any other further questions, please ask. Michael happens to be a colleague from the state of Virginia,
Okay.
and he's done some international work with our organization. So we thank him for joining us today. If nobody else has any questions, I'd like to say I really enjoyed your lecture today.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner.
I find the level of education on par with, it might even be better than the United States. I like this, your scheme of training, the opportunity to get involved in fellowships. And like I said before, there's textbooks that I've got where they're doing transcanal labyrinthectomies in India. I've never seen one, never heard of it other than through my readings. And I've worked with a few
Okay.
other colleagues from India, and as I say, otology is up on par and very advanced. So, Neela, unless there's any other questions, I'd like to thank you for your time, your preparation, and your in-depth review of the subject of your country and ENT services. And I'm looking forward to coming to India. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Wagner. You're most welcome. I'll be very happy if you come to Pondicherry or Chennai, and I can take you to visit all the otologists that you want to see.
All right. Thank you very
Yeah.
much, everybody. Thank you for joining and have a good week.
Thank you. Good night.